So literally right before I started recording this, I got a phone call from somebody in the business who I trust that told me that Jason David Frank, the actor who played the Green Ranger in Power Rangers, the White Ranger, he was the Red Zeo Ranger, most famously with those three roles, committed suicide and passed away. Um, I don't know. I'm going to look, I started to bring that up. I'll do a whole video on him once more information comes out about this. But I'm here to talk about AEW Full Gear 2022. And I haven't talked about AEW since the whole thing happened with CM Punk and the scrum and all that stuff. AEW's been kind of very, very weak this year, I would say. Tony Khan's been exposed as not being that great of a booker. And when Triple H came in there, he had like a 7 or 8 week streak where he was just on fire. Then for a couple weeks there, Raw was kind of not that good and Dynamite got good. I, as a wrestling fan, want both AEW and WWE to do well, but there are obviously a lot of problems in both companies. I think WWE's problems are slowly kind of getting fixed now. AEW still has a lot of work to do, but one thing they do not have a problem with is their pay-per-views. Tonight's pay-per-view was really, really good. Lots of great matches, lots of different matches, and some stuff that's going to be memorable. There were a couple of matches that I thought were kind of meh, but for the most part, if you ordered this show, you got good wrestling top to bottom, and everybody tried their best. They worked hard. Obviously, not everybody's going to have a classic, but everybody worked so hard on this show. And I do commend the entire talent roster because they really put their heart into this pay-per-view, yo. Right now, this is probably my third favorite show of the year, pay-per-view wise. I think Revolution is number 1. I think number 2 is probably Forbidden Door, but that's also a New Japan show with AEW. And number 3 is this show because match quality wise and stuff that happened, I feel like this is an important show. We have a new AEW champion, and it is MJF. William Regal, as I predicted on my Twitter, literally hours before it happened, gave MJF the knucks. He hits Moxley and gets the 1-2-3 in a very good match. Even though some of the stuff they did on this show was, I'm going to get to what irritated me about the show. But MJF is now the champion. He's a heel again with Regal, and Regal joining MJF has killed the Blackpool Combat Club. So now that whole group, Claudio and Brian and John Moxley, should all be feuding with MJF, yo. This should be a lot of fun television. I really hope Tony Khan gets it right because a lot of fun TV. A few things I noticed about this show overall. AEW has tremendous talent roster, and everybody works hard. But one thing that Tony Khan has not really mastered is how to put a card together as far as how to make a card flow. This pay-per-view had a lot of great matches. No question about it. Great talent. I'm not knocking it. But I think the match order was wrong. Putting on the Elites versus the Death Triangle this early in the show, I don't know if it's something that the Young Bucks and Kenny wanted, but when you have these two teams who not only have an incredible amount of history in AEW, they've been feuding for years. Kenny's first major feud in AEW was against Pac. And of course, let's not forget the Young Bucks and the Lucha Bros. They've had legendary matches. So that should have been near the end of the show, I feel. They did it as the second match on the show, and because of that, I think the crowd kind of got tired for a while because they followed it up with the Jade Cargill Nyla Rose match, which had several botched spots, and it wasn't that good of a match. Jade Cargill, I've said for a while, is like my bathroom break wrestler. Not that I have anything personal against her, but her matches are never that good because she's too green and has not wrestled enough to really get that experience. That is not her fault. Nyla Rose has been clumsy in the past. There were some botches in this match, and it was easily the worst match on the show. Putting that match on right after the 6-man, I think, is a huge error. And I think that he just has to figure out how to book things better, on the actual pay-per-views. That's one thing that Vince McMahon, I think, did pretty well. Also, Ghetto and New Japan did it pretty well as well. So the show opened with Jungle Boy against Luchasaurus. This feud with Christian continues. This was a steel cage match, and it was really good. They did a lot of really cool things. Jungle Boy was able to use the cage for his advantage. There were some nasty spots from Luchasaurus, chokeslam through the table. Jungle Boy, like there were a lot of near falls. What I was going to say about the show before I go any further is that one thing that I did not like about this show, and it was a show-long problem, is that the Tombstone Piledriver is now another move that has been rendered utterly useless. There were multiple tombstones on this show. The 6-man had it. I believe the Jungle Boy match had it. MJF and Moxley had it, including different variations, like a tombstone on the apron, for example. And honestly, the Tombstone Piledriver is a move that I feel should not be a kick-out move. That's like a finisher. And I understand that wrestling is evolving or whatever, but the Tombstone Piledriver is legitimately dangerous, especially when MJF hit it on Moxley on the apron. That should have been it. That should have been the finish right there because it's a tombstone on the apron. The Tombstone Piledriver by itself is a freaking mess. So on the apron, dude, that should be it. And I don't like the fact that they did that. Like the Canadian Destroyer has already been played out, but they got to have somebody in this company, an agent or somebody, to tell these guys, okay, do not copy spots from other matches. If you have a tombstone in match 1, don't have match 3 have one with a kick out. Like to me, that's something they have to work on. It's not a huge issue. It's not ruining the show for me, but personally, when I see a tombstone and somebody kicks out of it, like, dude, even in Mexico, if you hit that move, you're out for 6 months. And I'm not saying they have to take it that extreme, but it is a dangerous move. And The Undertaker obviously made it famous. He's not wrestling anymore. He's retired. But nonetheless, it's still a dangerous move. Do it in real life to someone on the concrete. You're going to make them bleed. So I want to talk about another match too. The ROH 4-way was awesome. Chris Jericho, Bryan Danielson, Claudio, and Sammy Guevara. I love how it starts off as kind of like a 2-on-2 thing with Claudio and Bryan against Sammy and Jericho. And then at one point it implodes to where Bryan is fighting with Claudio and Jericho's fighting with Sammy Guevara because he wants to be champion too. He wants to be champion too. And I love how in this match, the way they worked together, the near falls were really good. Guevara, there were a couple times they got me. There were a couple times where I actually thought Bryan might win. Guevara and Bryan, the match was a little bit of a weird match because you've got 4 guys with 4 different styles, but people like Jericho and Bryan can work any style. You know what I mean? But Claudio's going to be doing the big power moves and the European uppercuts. Bryan with the submissions. Jericho kind of the charismatic jack of all trades. And Sammy, high flyer. I actually like how Tony Khan booked this match to kind of give each different style of wrestling some shine. I like that. Like, that's the good side of TK's booking. I've been very critical of his booking in the past, but that's good booking, I feel. And these guys have chemistry. And the match went 21 minutes. I think it was the longest match on the show, right? I believe it was. I think it was. That or the main event. Saraya and Dr. Britt Baker or Paige didn't really get into this one. I know people are happy Paige is back, and I if she's healthy, I'm happy for her too. And I knew she was going to win, but the match kind of fell flat to me. Same thing with Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter, but there's a big difference. In the Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter match, there was a point while I'm watching it where I said, okay, it's time to end the match. It was starting to go too long. And then they started doing a sequence that got me back into the match. And that's beautiful. Like, Toni Storm and Jamie Hayter did a sequence that got me right back into the match. And that takes talent and it takes hard work. Jamie Hayter won the AEW Interim Women's title. So wait a minute. Have they given up on Toni Storm? I thought Toni Storm was going to have that title for a little bit longer until Thunder Rosa came back. But they're either going to go for a quick change back, or Jamie Hayter's who they're going with, which I'm okay with that because Hayter can have a feud with Britt Baker, who, by the way, interfered in this match too. Like, they can eventually have their split at some point, whenever that is, if they decide to do it. But I'm just very surprised that Toni Storm lost. And I know Hayter had momentum behind her, but that did genuinely surprise me. Samoa Joe versus Wardlow versus Powerhouse Hobbs, the big man match, the Vince McMahon match. I was surprised pleasantly that Samoa Joe won. He's the oldest guy in this match, and he's had a lot of injuries in the past few years, but he's still a hell of a worker and a great promo, and definitely a guy you want to have in your locker room. He is a locker room leader. He does have tons of experience. he's a good guy to have. And now he's a double champion. He won the AEW TNT title and is also the ROH TV champion. So he's got 2 belts. I like that. I hope they eventually lead to Joe versus Jericho for the ROH title since he's a former ROH champion. I hope we see that at some point. But this match, again, they kind of lost me right in the middle, and then they got me right back in. I'm just surprised that, and I thought the same thing I thought with the Tony Storm thing. Like, wait a minute, have they given up on Wardlow? Wardlow has not been booked well whatsoever since the MJF feud. The MJF feud was like the build up to it, the slow burn, going all the way back to like last year and earlier this year was phenomenal, I felt. And, his win over MJF, I think, was great. And I feel like they had something with this guy. He was super over, and now the crowd doesn't care that much about him at all. And that just goes to show how fast things can change. It all started with that promo he cut on TV where he said that he didn't want to be in the interim tournament because he wanted to face off against Punk one-on-one, which this is back in like May, June, and that's stupid. It was in June. It's stupid because if you win the interim title, you're going to face off against Punk. That's the whole point of winning that title. Oh, I'm not going to go through a tournament. I'm going to go after a lesser belt. Made no sense, bro. That makes no sense. Now, something else didn't make much sense to me, but it kind of did. I'm going to jump around the card, by the way, y'all. The Acclaimed against Swerve in Our Glory. So the Acclaimed is super over. They're not the best in-ring guys. They can go, but they're not like anywhere near being the best tag team when it comes to in-ring. Obviously, FTR, the Young Bucks, and Lucha Bros are like the cornerstones of the company, and they're just incredible teams. I feel like the Acclaim, though, has that super charisma that connects with the audience, as you've seen for the past few weeks. It really connects. And they're special. I mean, they definitely... Platinum Max is a special, charismatic dude. And I didn't think he would ever get out from the prelims, but he is the tag team champion. The match went on second to last, and they worked really hard. There were some good false finishes here. I enjoyed this match more than the one they had at All Out. But I'm going to tell you this, though. When I say it doesn't make any sense, okay, let me explain what I mean. So Keith Lee and Swerve, right, they've been teasing a breakup. That's no surprise. At one point in this match, they broke up. Swerve was treating Keith Lee like crap, put his hands on him. Keith Lee walks out. Now, I understand him walking out because you don't disrespect a man like that. In character, that works, but you're also walking out on a tag team title shot. So in a weird, subtle way, you're kind of bearing the tag belts. Now, if Keith Lee cuts a promo on Dynamite explaining that, at that point you pissed me off so much the belts didn't mean anything to me, then I would be okay to forgive it. But you're in a title match, bro. Like, you guys can work out your issues. If this was real, you can work out your issues later. But, he left. It wasn't the worst idea ever. It could have been done better. And the Acclaim continue their victory. I'm wondering when they're going to get to the Acclaimed against FTR. That's got to happen at some point, right? Maybe the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn against the Elite. I don't know. But without question, y'all, my favorite match on the show was the Death Triangle against the Elite. It was your typical insane six-man, crazy spots. These guys who have wrestled each other 1,000 times. Don't forget, Penta versus Kenny Omega was one of the main events at All In, way back in 2018. So, there's a lot of history here with these guys. They have incredible chemistry. I love the finish, how basically Rey Fénix does not want to cheat to win. But at one point he gets a hammer. At one point he throws it away. He's like, no, I'm not going to win like this. But then what happens is the match keeps going. Kenny's about to go for the one-winged angel. Fénix hits him in the head with the hammer. And then that becomes the reversal and the pinfall. So the feud continues. They announced they're going to do a best-of-7 series. And I'm super excited about that because all we're going to get here is great match after great match. The difficulty, which is something that's going to be a big task for Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, the Death Triangle, is how do we make each match different? How do we make each match stand out? It's not easy. I mean, being a pro wrestler, you can't have every match be the same. They have to work a different kind of match. So I'm very excited for that best of 7 because that grouping, these 6 guys, I can watch them work all day, every day, and not get tired of it. Obviously, after 7 matches, we'll be tired of it, but I love it. I wanted this feud to continue genuinely because these are the two best trios in the company, in my opinion. And I think that they could really carry the ball, yo. And my biggest gripe is that this match was on so early. They should have been up there. They should have swapped out the Acclaim match with this one. I think it would have been a lot better. Real quick before we get to the main event, I want to talk about the prelims. The Best Friends against the Factory. That was a mix of like comedy and high flying. It was a good opener. This was very New Japanish because Geto loves to book the comedy stuff at the beginning of the show. So that's a good little warm-up match. I can't even say TK was wrong about that one. Ricky Starks beat Brian Cage for the World Title Eliminator Tournament, which is the one that is going to end on Dynamite. And I think Ricky Starks going to win. I think it'll be him against Ethan Page. I think he'll win this one. But he won here. And the dude's over. The dude is over as a babyface. So if they book it to where Ricky Starks wins and we get like a TV feud with Ricky Starks and MJF, I would enjoy that. I really would. I like the main event, MJF versus Jon Moxley for the AEW title. I felt like I enjoyed this match a little bit more than the Punk Moxley match at All Out, but that one probably was put together better. This one was a little bit messy. Not necessarily a bad match at all. I really liked the match, but like this is the match where we saw MJF do a tombstone to Mox on the apron, and like that should have been it, and it wasn't, and that's just like that's too dangerous of a move for it to be a 2 count. I know I'm sticking on that, but it's how I feel, honestly. But the match was well worked. So when MJF hit that tombstone, he hurt his knee. So the story of the match was Mox going after his knee. Because originally they started out the match, he was showboating, they were kind of feeling each other out. And then that happens, and so Mox works over the knee. Then, like I mentioned earlier, Regal gives MJF the knucks, and he knocks out freaking Jon Moxley, and MJF wins. Now, I'm not sure where we're going with this next. I'm going to assume that on Dynamite, Regal will get interviewed and explained, but Regal as a heel with MJF is phenomenal. And one thing that I think the internet has kind of like ruined, like wrestling fans, okay, if you started watching wrestling in like the Attitude Era or after that, you've been like taught wrestling, not necessarily wrong, but like it's not what wrestling was prior to the Attitude Era. What I mean by that is this. There's some people who were like, oh, he doesn't need a mouthpiece. And that's like, dude, it has nothing to do with being a mouthpiece. Not every wrestler that has a manager needs a mouthpiece. Do you think that Mox needs Regal as a mouthpiece? No, that's not what this is about. It's about the fact that MJF and Regal together is a great heel combination. The villain and the devil, they both have the kind of like brass knuckles ring move. They fit together perfectly, dude. They fit together perfectly. I mean, and people don't even know the business to where, like, in the past we have guys like Superstar Billy Graham and the Grand Wizard. Do you really think Billy Graham needed the Grand Wizard to talk for him? No. Do you really think that Mr. Perfect or Rick Rude needed Bobby Heenan or Nick Bockwinkel? No. But they work well together. Giving somebody a manager is not just like, oh, well, he can't talk, there's a manager. There's other reasons for it. And I think Regal betraying Moxley and going with MJF is a great way to make MJF a heel again, right? And also a great way to give Regal something new and a new feud. Now we got the Blackpool Combat Club, whatever's left of them, feuding with MJF. I would have hated it if the Firm came out to attack. There were some people who were like, well, maybe MJF, is a plan to fool Moxley. Why would MJF allow himself to get beat up after Mox got beat up? That doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense, and I'm glad that TK didn't go with that. There were people on Twitter arguing with me. Oh, watch, bro. Watch. I probably guarantee you the Firm's it's all planned. I hate when wrestling, and even if they were right, I would hate it. I hate when you do like turn angles where you have a guy getting beat up and you actually see him getting beat up on camera, and then he's like, oh, well, it was all swerve. I let him beat me up just to mess with you. That's dumb, dude. That's dumb. I hate when wrestling does that. That's Russo shit. So I'm glad that this went the way it did. I'm genuinely glad that it did. And I look forward to Dynamite now. Hopefully they've course corrected the show enough to where now the show can be, good every single week again. I hope so. I really do. The Elite are going to be wrestling on the show, and I like them in the 6-man division. I think they fit well there. And I look forward to seeing what happens. Again, good pay-per-view. I think, like I mentioned before, I still think Revolution was a little bit better because every match on that show was phenomenal, and I was there live. Here you did have that Jade Cargill Nyla Rose match, which they just need more training, dude. They're not bad; they just need more training. But that's it. What did you think about AEW All Out? Full Gear 2022? Let me know, and we'll talk soon.